And we wanted to start off by being participatory and doing a poll, but we don't have quite as many people on as I thought just yet. We're up to 10, not bad. We have a lot more registered. So what I'm going to suggest is that we're going to do our own introductions first, and then we'll go back and do a poll. Hopefully there'll be a few more people on that'll catch it that way. So first of all, I wanted to introduce this very informal collaborative. We are not a formal collaborative in any sense of the word. I did a podcast episode with Liza Dahl, and while we were talking, we're just like, we just spoke each other's language. We had so many of the same things that we cover with clients, but from a different perspective. So we thought, how can we collaborate? What can we do? Well, we happen to be both happen to be members of a really cool group called Pepper Lane, and it's a group based out of Massachusetts, but with a national membership now. And it's a group that really focuses on the needs of mothers/women in business, and it's a wonderful networking organization. So if you want to check it out, let me know, or maybe Lisa or somebody can post a link to it in the chat. Pepper Lane is the name of it. And so this was the outcome of our podcast episode, where we afterwards thought, how can we collaborate? What can we talk about that would be kind of fun to do? So we talked a lot about meal planning. So we thought, we'll pull in some other Pepper Laners. And Michelle Seidling, Seidling, did a podcast interview with me, interviewed me. And when Lisa and I were talking, I'm like, I know one more person I need to bring in on this. So we all have a connection to each other in some way, shape, or form from before this. And I think at least 3 of us, if not all 4 of us, have got certified as health coaches, most of us at IIN, I believe. So there is that too. So anyway, quick introductions. I'm Liza Baker. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I support women burning out in mission-driven work. That's my main focus. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Hey everyone, welcome. I am Liza Dahl, and I am a non-diet health coach. So I work with women to help them learn how to listen, trust, and respect their bodies so that they can be happy, healthy, and confident at any size. So what that means is that I help women ditch the diet. We remove all structure of weighing food, bodies, measuring food or bodies. And I really help you learn how to remove diet culture and learn to be able to connect with your body so that you make choices that make you feel best. And next is Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Seidling. I'm a holistic health coach and instructional psychologist. My mission is to help C-suite executives and military transitioners to develop healthy, sustainable habits for life success. That's a fancy way of saying that I help people develop that mindset to use food in all its forms for life success and to help you to be a better person and be better personally and professionally. I'm also the host of the Food Experience Unplugged podcast, which Liza was a fabulous guest on.
10 out of 10 would recommend that podcast, by the way. Food Experience Unplugged. Make sure you check it out.
And that's a health and wellness podcast that helps people focus on making the connection between food and life success. And I will turn it over to Christa.
Hey everyone, I'm Christa Lyons, and I am a nutrition and lifestyle coach. And I help midlife women master their metabolisms and uncover their hidden blocks to bust through weight gain, fatigue, stress, so that their health is no longer an obstacle to their happiness.
That's lovely. Thank you all for being so succinct and very, very clear. And unfortunately, one of our panelists dropped out at the very last minute. We had one more person who was going to participate, and she had to withdraw for business reasons mostly, which is a good thing, right? She was just saying that she had other things to do that were going to be more important to her at this point. So we're sorry to lose her, but there's only 4 of us, which means you get more time for questions. So we have quite a few people on now. And what I'm going to do is run a poll, and then we're going to get started. So there are 4 co-hosts, so we won't be able to vote on this, but everybody else, here's your poll. How much time do you spend meal planning in an average week? So your choices are: what's meal planning, 1 to 30 minutes, 31 to 60 minutes, and at least an hour. Excellent. All right, this is great. One more person. We're almost there. All right, we're going to go. 6 out of 7 participants have responded. So 7 out of 7. There we go. Excellent. So I'm going to end the poll and share. And there we have it. That's really exciting. So we have some people who the majority fall in the middle, and then we have some who spend more than 30 minutes, and some that don't meal plan at all. At least they don't think they do, but they might discover they actually do. All right, so that's where we're going to get started. And the next question is a speed round, and we're going to go through really quickly and say, where do you find your recipes? So Lisa, you're up first.
I'm going to say Bon Appetit, Cooks Illustrated, Simply Quinoa, Loves and Lemons, and then there's always the basic Google search if I'm looking for something that I can't find, and absolutely go from there.
Excellent. Christa.
I go to Pinterest. I love Pinterest because I can go in and I can say, what do I have on hand? I have chicken and asparagus. And so I go in there and I plug those in, and a gazillion recipes come up. And I'm finding that most of them are made with whole, real ingredients. And so then I also know that if the recipe says chicken, I know for myself, I'm going to be buying organic chicken. So I do tweak the recipes for as many organic ingredients that I can find, but I go to Pinterest a lot.
Good answer. I hadn't even thought about that. I know, I'm just a different generation, I think. Michelle, how about you?
Well, when I make any recipe, I look for those rich, bold flavors and nutrition that you would find and expect in any cuisine. For example, if I'm making a pasta bolognese, I would expect to use a lot of garlic and spices and stir in the liquid, not cut corners and some prepackaged product. As such, I look for websites and recipes that really stand out and have that authentic flair to them. My favorites are the Food Network, Loves and Lemons, and Once Upon a Chef. I love those because they take time to look not only at the ingredients, which are wholesome and nourishing, but they also take time to look at that food history and really give an authentic flair to any recipe.
Love that answer.
Back to you, Lisa.
All right. Well, I will say that my recipes come predominantly from my head / my own cookbook. But recently, like I said, I'm now a complete empty nester. I have cleaned everybody out of my house except for the dog, so I get to cook and eat the way I want to. And I've been really digging into plant-based recipes. And for those, I tend to go to Deborah Madison and also a cookbook / website called Oh She Glows. So that's our speed round. And I hope you got some inspiration from there. The next question is really going to get us started for reals, and it is define meal planning. Michelle, you're up first for this one.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Meal planning to me, well, literally, it's deciding in advance what you'll eat for a period of time. Typically, people plan for a week, but you could plan for a day, few days, or even a month. But more importantly, it means taking time, making time to integrate food into your life. I love what leadership expert Stephen Covey says. He talks a lot about sharpening the saw. So in health terms, meal planning is essentially sharpening the saw. You're getting ready to infuse fuel and food into your life. And you're making time to take those ingredients or take those things that really will nourish you and think about what is going to really help you, regardless of what you're doing personally or professionally. I will turn it over to, well,
Christa.
how about Christa?
So I think meal planning to all of us is probably going to be fairly similar. To me, it's putting together a plan. It's thinking ahead what are we going to have on a specific day or for a specific meal, which takes, the inevitable question, Mom, what's for dinner? Out of the situation. And so it allows you to put together a plan so that you know what to buy at the store, what you're preparing, and everybody knows what you're eating. So for me, it's just thinking ahead a bit.
Great. Lisa, you're up.
So I use 4 words: plan, prep, provision, and protect. Plan for what you're going to eat, figure out when you're going to be prepping, how to get the food into your house, and to protect your time. With those 4 words, I also use something that I refer to as mindful meal planning, taking into account flexibility, balance, variety, pleasure, and simplicity. And I'm sure we'll start to dig into the nuances of all of that as we move on. So I'm going to, who's next?
I'm next. That's great. Thank you. I would agree with everything everyone has said, and I can simplify my concept of meal planning down to one sentence, which is always, and I mean always, cook for more than one meal. So whether you're thinking about doing pre-prep or you're thinking about what you're making tonight, always think ahead. And if I make more of this, what can I do with it later in the week? So we're going to dig into that more for sure. So first, let's talk a little bit about what are the myths of meal planning. And Christa, you're up first for this one.
Okay. So for me, what I find a common myth of meal planning is that it has to be a rigid schedule. And so people feel, like, well, I've put together this plan. So that means if Tuesday says chicken and asparagus, that's what we're going to have. But oftentimes life is fluid, right? And a friend might call and say, hey, let's go out. Are you free Tuesday? And all of a sudden, you think, oh, well, I've got this plan and I may have paid someone to put it together for me. And you're trying to stick to it, but life is fluid. And so for me, one of the biggest myths is that you have to stick to it. And to me, going out with your friend is going to feed your body so much as well. And so I say, don't put too much stress into it and take the meal planning more with ease. Use it as guidance instead of a rigid schedule.
Love it. Lisa, what are the myths of meal planning?
3 meals a day, 3 meals, 7 days a week, 21 meals a week. It's overly rigid, overly structured. And this is going to be hard to believe coming from somebody who supports health and wellness, is that it's very restrictive and an overemphasis on nutritional quality. Trying to figure, it's just, if it's not this, then you have failed. So trying to get rid of that black and white thinking of what meal planning looks like. It's all good on paper. And then as Christa shared, life happens, and that it doesn't always take into account our pleasure, our enjoyment, and flexibility.
Beautiful. Michelle, how about you? What's another myth of meal planning?
Another myth of meal planning is that it's time consuming. You're spending hours in the kitchen. Oh my goodness, you're ready to get out of there. But that could not be further from the truth. Meal planning can be as simple or as complex as you like. Depending on your schedule, you may have time on the weekends to spend a little more time making that pasta bolognese or making some other special meal, versus during the week, maybe you're going to grab a smoothie or you're going to pre-prepare something in advance so that you're ready to go. But it doesn't have to take a lot of time. You decide the ingredients, you decide the recipes, you make up your own recipes. That's sometimes the best thing. But it doesn't have to be a lot of time. You decide based on your schedule, and the important thing is that you feel confident about it, that it doesn't stress you out, that it doesn't take up all of your day.
Beautiful. And I would add to that, yes, that very often we think it's complicated and time consuming, and also that it's prescriptive, that there is one right way and wrong, everything else is wrong, right? So especially coming from integrative nutrition, where we emphasize bioindividuality, I always like to tell my clients, you got to find a way that works for you. And we're going to talk a lot about what those ways might look like. So the next question sort of picks up where that one leaves off. And as we go through this question, I would love to know in the chat what you guys listening in have thought about meal planning in the past. Like, does it feel heavy? Does it feel complicated? Like any other things that you have thoughts about? What's your gut reaction when you heard meal planning? So the next question is, what, if any, are the benefits of meal planning? And Lisa, you're up first for this one.
I truly believe that it saves time and money. It increases your pleasure, reduces your stress, and it can create connections with those around you and your family, as opposed to, as Christa shared, like what's for dinner at 5 o'clock. If you have that conversation ahead of time, it can create connection. And even, we're so concerned about teaching our children that, it's an inconvenience for them to help us or that we feel bad. We're teaching them a life skill. Have them get involved so that they can be part of that conversation. So it just is another way to connect with your kids and your family.
Beautiful. All right, Michelle, you're up. What are the benefits of meal planning?
A big one is that you have control over what you eat. Many times, if we're picking something up from the convenience store or at a restaurant, we don't know what's in it. We may have ordered chicken, but what else is in there? In this case, when you plan, you decide what the ingredients are. And that helps you take into account things like food allergies or medical needs or just general preferences. But having control, you can control, of course, the portion size, but also the quality. What is going to be the best thing to fuel your body? That would be the biggest benefit, in my opinion.
Great. All right. And I think the only thing I would add to that is that I think, and Lisa sort of touched on this already, which is that you can think of it as, in the long run, it's going to save you time and money and energy. And always, 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 it helps you to say, this is what's for dinner when somebody pops the question at 3:30 as they're getting into the minivan, like the last thing you want to be thinking about. So the next thing we want to do is pause there. And I'm going to just really quickly go through some of the comments that you guys made in the audience about your reaction to the word meal planning, or words meal planning. So challenging and restrictive came up. Meal planning never works for me. I think I have it planned, but I hardly ever follow it. How do all 4 of us agree on a meal, let alone 21 meals? Yes, nailed it. Don't mind the planning, find it helpful in a busy work week, but I have a super restricted picky eater. Oh, yes. And it makes me crazy because she won't eat so many of the meals my husband and I will eat. That is a huge issue. And I love this because we're just about to hit the first place where we're going to pause for your questions. And I think there's a question right in there that we can talk about. And Danielle says, yes, I'm obsessed with meal planning. Yay. Danielle has raised a very big blended family. And I know that she's had friends turn to her and ask about meal planning. So I'm really, really thrilled that she'll be here. And I'm sure she's going to be one of those audience members that really contributes a lot constructively in the chat. So pay attention to what Danielle posts, because she'll have some added things there. Maybe we should just bring her up and make her a panelist. Margaret says, I often end up planning more than one meal for family members who do not like the main course. Yes, cooking more than one meal. Also, it does allow me to plan around activities, sports, etc. Yes, when you have busy kids, it makes for busy moms. I like to be able to plan around sports, but always have so much left over. Yes. Okay, so I think I'm just going to sort of pull one question from there because it's not one of the ones that we had agreed to talk about ahead of time. And so we're going to just throw that out there to any of the panelists. And that is, what do you do when you have a so-called mixed diet family and or a very picky eater? Anybody want to take that? Go ahead, Lisa.
I can start. Couple of things that I do is I will layer foods. So I'll use different spices. Like if I'm cooking vegetables on a sheet pan and somebody only likes salt and pepper, I will divide it and put salt and pepper here. And then I'll have a mix of spices that I have pre-made that I can just shake on. That will give a different flavor palette to whatever I'm cooking. The other thing that I do that I highly recommend is that when you put food out on the table, that you don't discuss it, that you don't talk about it, that you always have something that you know that your children are going to like, and then you cook whatever you like for you. And don't say, oh, you should taste this. Oh, it's good for you. Oh, it's this. It's that. It's the first line that somebody's going to be like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. Always making something that you know that your kids or family are going to like, and then add in things that you like. With time, it'll be amazing to discover what they will start to touch and look at. But plopping new foods onto their food is the fastest way to have a meltdown at 6 o'clock at night with kids. So that's what I recommend and have seen work for me, my family, as well as my clients.
I love that idea of doing one sheet pan, but then you're seasoning it differently and keeping it separate in just like within that one sheet pan. That's really such a great suggestion. I've never actually thought about that to that extent, sort of personalizing it. I love that. Christa and Michelle, anything to add there?
I'd like to add the emotion and the interaction is key. Depending on the age of your child and their willingness to learn, invite them into the kitchen, help them to gear, even at a young age, to understand food, to really help with food. There are things that even young children can do. Help them to get excited about what they're doing. Help them to pick their own food of what they're doing. And also that interaction. So you're getting that through inviting them into the kitchen and instilling that emotion, that excitement, whether it's in the kitchen or even at the table. Like, wow, hey, I made you that cheese tortellini. You love it. It's got 4 different kinds of cheese in it. Whoa. Just really talking it up among, even whether just with your children or as a family or as a group, just really talk it up. And whether your picky eater is 3, 13, 23 or more, you can bring them into the food process and bring them and help them to have a positive food experience.
Love it. Christa, how about you? Suggestions for the mixed diet and picky eater families?
No, I ultimately failed in this area here.
No, there's no such word as failure.
I have a child who is absolutely the pickiest ever. And I have made Annie's mac and cheese for him. He is now 20. He's now in college. But what we're finding is that he though he has expanded a little bit being in school, obviously, because he doesn't want to starve, there definitely are some deep-seated reasons why he chose to be stubborn and and has been, I think his initial stubbornness has created now this lifelong pattern of, well, now I don't eat. Now I don't know what to eat or how to eat, so even though my husband and I and my other son, like we cook a lot, my husband's a chef. There's every reason why he, could have been involved. And I think this is a really interesting subject and that there's a lot of different layers to it. And so my mom said as a kid, well, you just have to, just put it out, he'll eat, he won't starve. But he was a strong-willed, stubborn child, and it was not easy. So I did the best I could. And now that he's 20, he's finally getting help for what that deep-seated reason was. So
thank you for bringing that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A couple things I would add is I have a very funny story about picky eaters because my husband is Chinese, so our children are half Chinese. And when they were really little in Chicago, we would have Chinese babysitters for them because we wanted them to speak Chinese before they spoke English. So we had these wonderful, they were the parents of grad students or the parents or a spouse of a grad student. We had a huge sort of pool of wonderful babysitters. And you can imagine they bring these kids into their homes and what do these kids see? They see, oh, lunch involves 3 courses and it's hot. And, it's like totally unrealistic expectations. And I just remember my daughter going to preschool, coming home the first day, like, what was that? What did they try to make me eat? But the funny part of the story is that when she was growing up, when she was really little and had these Chinese babysitters, her favorite food was, get this, simmered chicken livers, Chinese style, right? So one time we're in the grocery store and my I was pushing her in the stroller and I'm like, okay, we're going to make chicken livers for dinner. And she's all excited. We go to the counter and there isn't any. And the guy behind the counter is like, oh, I just pulled the last one because they were, the sell by date was passed and we can't sell them. And I was just like, darn it. And she started crying. And a woman leans over her stroller and says, oh, honey, mommy won't buy you a cookie. And I'm like, no, mommy won't buy her chicken livers. So, picky children are sort of can be a factor of their environment where like, this is what we have for lunch. We have simmered chicken livers and aren't they good? Right. But the things that I would add to sort of tactics for mixed diet and picky eater families is number one, I call it belly up to the bar. The more things you can think of that involve the word bar, other than wet bar, but taco bar, nacho bar, burrito bar, just to cover the Mexican parts, baked potato bar. What other things do we have? Salad bar, Buddha bowls, anything you can think of that is made up of components where you can offer some things that people will eat, whether one person eats it or another person, somebody is going to want that. And the rest is, there's a book called, I think it's called Devoured. And it talks about this activity as chefing. And Michelle touched on this, where if a child is involved, even from like the gardening perspective, they will tend to eat foods that they wouldn't normally eat if they hadn't grown them themselves. If they hadn't helped you to cook them, they wouldn't eat them. But the more you can involve kids in this sort of chefing adventure, even if it's just picking what is it you want on your taco. Now, obviously, you're not going to make a million different things. You're just going to make a limited number of things, just keeping in mind that somebody will want this and somebody won't. And to that same end, if you're a meat and two sides kind of family, we always looked at it as, I'm going to make this protein, this vegetable, and this starch. And most of everybody in the family will eat 2 out of those 3 things. The best piece of advice I got from a pediatrician when my kids were little was, think about it as a balanced week. Don't worry about a balanced meal. Think about a balanced week. So if one day my son didn't like the meat, but he liked the 2 sides, great. He didn't eat the meat. Not a problem. I wasn't going to make something else for him. He could make do with 2/3 of what everybody else was eating. Same thing, my daughter wouldn't want the starch. She would eat the vegetables and the protein. So those are my 2 pieces of advice. Danielle says, raised 5 kids, blended family with all sorts of food-related issues, developed some good strategies. Yes, Danielle, please share. Feel free to just keep typing in the chat.
Well, I wrote a couple of notes because I understood all of this. And for me as a new bonus mom, it was hard at first because I don't have picky eaters. 2 of the 5 kids are mine. And my kids aren't picky. We never really gave them a choice. We didn't have any conversations about food. We put it in front of them and praise baby Jesus. They were great eaters. But then I got these 3 bonus kids. One was gluten intolerant, and the other had really like texture issues. And it was really hard in the beginning. I would get frustrated, but I learned what you just said. Like if I make a meal that incorporates something that I think everybody will like, one night he might eat only macaroni and cheese and not the chicken because he would gag on chicken, but the next night he would eat 4 slices of pizza. So I just took that exact same approach that you just described. I took that approach with the kids. And then my kids were a little bit older when I started raising this blended family. They were like ranges 8 to 15. And I always had them pick a meal. So we planned out 6 meals a week. We always ate out as a treat 1 night a week. So each kid, there's 5 of them, got to pick a meal and I picked a meal. So at least 1 night a week, they felt like they were excited. They were to come home and eat their favorite thing. And then the best thing I ever did, there's always a backup option in my pantry, and they were old enough to go make themselves some food. So if they wanted to have a healthy bowl of cereal or some other thing that we had agreed on was like an okay supplement or replacement for that meal, if you will not eat what's on the table or you're still hungry, you can go make that food in the pantry that we already agreed on, but I'm not making anything extra.
I love that. Yes. Empowerment, not enablement, right? That's a wonderful solution. Yeah. We had that rule on occasion. Yeah. If you don't like this, make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Make yourself something that's on the approved list of things that you know how to make. So that's great. Anybody else want to add anything? And I will encourage you to keep adding questions in the chat too. Is there anybody who has a question that we can address now, or shall we move on? Okay, I'm going to move on. Make sure that you drop your questions in the chat as they come up. Next one is sort of also a speed round. So in, 20 words or less. Now, what's your take on meal kits? And so we're talking like Green Chef, Blue Apron, etc. I'm going to go first, and I'm just going to say meal kits, 5 out of 10. I love what they do for people who don't cook. I don't see them as a sustainable long-term option, and I really dislike the environmental impact that a lot of them have. So that's my take on meal kits. And next is Michelle.
Thanks, Lisa. I think meal kits are a great introduction to food and cooking, but they should be used as a gateway to build your cooking skills and to become self-sufficient. Yes, meal kits are great. You can explore different cuisines. They've got pretty much any cuisine on the market, on the world, you can get through a meal kit. And they're super helpful in that regard, but meal planning is really minimal. You open the kit, it's everything sliced and diced and ready for you. And as Emerald Lagasse says, bam, you've got a meal in 30 minutes or less. And that might be great, but meal planning is part of the food experience. And it sparks creativity and innovation and really a sense of service to yourself and those with whom you cook. So planning new or favorite dishes or whatever your menu entails is part of developing those positive food experiences. So in that regard, meal kits can act as a springboard to help you to spark that creativity, to develop and create those really realistic goals for yourself in terms of fueling your body and be able to have the quality food that you and your body need and be able to do that in a timely manner. Meal kits are a great introduction, but it's up to you to really take off and use it kind of as a diving board, so to speak, and move into other areas to build your skills.
I love that. It's like the gateway drug for cooking. Well put. Gateway, springboard. Yes, completely. I love that. Christa, your take on meal kits.
So I tried HelloFresh, and I found the quality of food to not be what I was looking for. And there was a lot of plastic and wrappers. And they have to do that because if you need a teaspoon of soy sauce, they're going to give you a little packet of soy sauce. So the benefit is that everything you need for a recipe is contained and delivered. You have everything that you need. However, I did not like the quality. That being said, it is way better than going through the Burger King drive-through. And my last point with meal kits is just that there are some really good meal plan or meal kits that you can get that do have, there's a lot now that are out with organic ingredients. There are some plant-based ones. If I were to order meal kits again, I would definitely do my research and find some of the better ones. But again, it's way better than going through the drive-through.
Yes, good answer. Good answer. Lisa, how about you? Your take on meal kits?
I definitely agree with the plastic and the environmental factor. The question that I would ask is to get curious. What is it that you need, or what is that meal kit going to provide for you? Is it that where are you getting stumped? Is it about the planning? Is it about the prepping? Is it about time? Understanding the purpose of the meal kit so that you know why you're choosing it and when is the best time to use it, and to find one that is within your budget, the amount of time that you want to spend, what is important to you in terms of nutrition. With so many different options, I do think that there is probably a kit out there that will fit somebody's needs. And I view everything on a spectrum. And what is going to be working, what is best for you at that moment in time. And it doesn't mean that you're committed to it and that it's a lifetime thing, that it might work for a season, it might work for a few weeks, that removing the judgment and saying that any food on the table is better than the stress and the anxiety in the pit if it gets food on the table. So no black or white on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that we all have like, well, here are the pros and here are the cons. And it sounds like the one thing we can really agree on is they're a great gateway. They can serve a purpose, and they're not necessarily empowering you going forward. They're sort of, you will not learn how to meal plan using a meal kit. You will stay forever enabled. Like you will need someone else to tell you what to make and how much to make and how to do it. So it's all about empowerment from our perspective, and they don't quite fit the bill on that scale.
So actually, though, I'm going to interrupt on that one. And that I do personally think that that can be part of your meal planning. That any type of saying that I'm going to do this on this time or having it available is part of meal planning. How do we get out of the judgment of this is the only way to meal plan, and you might do it different ways on different times and different days? So kind of another thought.
I like that perspective. Yes. So they are a form of meal planning because it happens to be what is right for you that week or that day. So in that sense, yes, you know that there will be days that you might need that. We had some great comments in the chat. Amy says they are more time consuming than they say, and they cost too much. And Danielle had another comment saying that her daughter's a freshman in college and lives alone in an apartment, and they set her up with HelloFresh for a year. And with that agreement, with the agreement that she would keep those recipe cards. And that's where I was, hello, puppy.
It's quiet. That's all that matters.
That's where I was going to go with that, which is, they can also become a gateway because you can do all this exploring and, like Michelle said, and recognize, oh, I like this recipe. How could I make it part of my repertoire without using the service, right? You have the recipe card. Nothing's stopping you from using that as part of your meal plan for that week. You will have to chop and measure, and it can become another sort of gateway. So Danielle has shared something in the chat, and I don't know what it is, but I'm excited.
It was just a picture of the food she recently made.
Oh,
yeah.
All right, so everybody check out the picture.
I just also wanted to say about learning to prep and plan. Oftentimes college students on a limited budget either will buy the wrong food or they won't go shopping at all and plan for a meal because either it's overwhelming or they don't know how to buy the right foods on their budget. So our thought was, we're getting her good food on this budget. And guess what? The food shows up at her doorstep and it's fresh and it's food that she has to make and eat so that it doesn't go to waste. So she's more likely to plan for that meal and eat the food that mom and dad sent to her house versus, live off of, I don't know, cheese and crackers and Diet Coke. I don't know, but she's a healthy eater, but it helped her plan, I think, and be more conscientious about that.
Yeah.
And then she had everything she needed too, because it literally comes with everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Amy also says, I've saved many recipes trying various meal kits. That's exactly what it's about. It's a great way to explore and then make it your own. Any other questions? Let's see. Kathy Loomis, meal planning is stressful. Can't think of enough things to make without looking up all the recipes. Yes, that's where it becomes time consuming, where you're like, oh, that means I need to sit down. I need to look at all these recipes. I need to make a grocery list. I need to go to the store. I need to store this stuff. I need to prep this stuff. And then it just feels like, oh, that's a lot. So we're going to keep going. And I'm sure that there will be some pointers in here that will help with that overwhelm. So the next question is, how do you approach meal planning or not with your clients? We all serve in a coaching capacity, more or less. So how do we approach meal planning or not with our clients? And it can include, what is your system? Lisa already mentioned that she has a system that she has an acronym for and everything. I think it's 4 Ps, right? And do we use it ourselves? How do we use it ourselves? And how do we teach it to our clients? So Michelle, why don't you start off?
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, the goal of meal planning is to get fuel into your body. So with that, remember 2 things, motivation and execution. First, let's tackle motivation. First, that's the why behind what you're doing. I love what organizational psychologist Benjamin Hardy talks about when he says, when you understand the why, you can plan the how. You figure out, why am I doing this? And we just talked about several different benefits of meal planning: saving time, saving money, controlling what you eat. Think about, why am I meal planning? Why do I want to prepare a meal for myself or for my family? What's that motivation behind that? And then there are several things to take into consideration. I use 6 different areas that I call the 6 principles of positive food experiences. And they are food itself, whether your own preferences, the preferences of those with whom you eat. Are there any food allergies? Are there any medical needs? People, utilizing people. What is the influence? Who are you cooking for yourself? Or are you cooking for a big family, a small family, or something in between? Are you having a dinner guest that week? That's also something to consider. The environment is where you're eating. Are you going to sit down at the table at your home for a meal? Maybe. Are you working late at night and just eating at your desk? Maybe. Did you just stuff something in your mouth on the way to this webinar? Maybe. But taking that into consideration. Your knowledge base, not only the level of cooking skills you currently have, but what do you want to do? What do you want to explore? What cuisines or equipment or talents that you want to develop? Looking at that and seeing, how can I integrate that? Maybe not every day, but sprinkling that into my week or my month. Also, the interaction with food. The whole key of meal planning, a big key anyway, is to develop that relationship between you and the food. When somebody hands you a burger through a drive-through window, let me tell you, there's not a lot of interaction going on right there, other than eating the food. But interaction, meaning plan, look at what you're eating, look at how I can get in touch with the food, how that's helping my body, how that's helping in the case of our areas of bio-individuality, what's my unique situation? And then goal setting, motivation, looking at what goals, what am I trying to achieve? What bang am I trying to get? Am I trying to really impress some dinner guests? Maybe. Or am I trying to just feed a lot of hungry teenagers on the way to an activity? Then taking those things into consideration, let's look at the second one, which is execution. How are we going to do that? In a few words, write the food down. Write everything, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, everything that you and those with whom you cook and eat, take that into consideration. Write down everything. Look at, there may be some things you have on hand already, some basic staples that we'll talk about later in this webinar. But there may also be things that you need to purchase. Then look at where you're purchasing it. I like to have that on my phone. And basically I kind of color code or make some kind of mark where, okay, I need these ingredients from this store. And then I can be a little more strategic about it rather than just randomly getting ingredients. And then there's, you can always use grocery delivery. Most, if not all, grocery stores have some type of grocery delivery, or you can do online like Amazon or some other area. But make things easier for you. Getting food into your body, fueling that. How can I do that? Just thinking about that. And then utilizing, once you understand that process, you can utilize some tips and tricks. For example, we talked about leftovers earlier. I always make, whenever I plan and cook a new meal, I always make sure I have things for enough for at least 2 meals, if not more, depending on the situation. If it was good enough for that first time, then it's good enough to reheat and have those leftovers. There are also websites that you can have things and recipes and ideas straight to your inbox to make things easier so you're not having to spend that extra time. There are also meal planning apps such as Big Oven, Pepper Plate, and Meal Planner available for you to utilize. but think about what works for you and what is going to help you the best to nourish your body, but also not spend those hours in the kitchen.
Beautiful. All right, Christa, you're next.
That's tough to follow. That
I
was
know that's a hard act to follow.
tough.
We should have put her at the end, right?
Those were some fabulous.
We're just going to be
I was
filling
taking
in
notes
now.
myself. Okay, how do I approach meal planning? So my clients are taking a food sensitivity test. My clients are taking a metabolic typing test. And my clients are also transitioning into healthier lifestyle. And so often when the results come back from these tests, they think, oh my gosh, I can't eat anything. But really, there's a lot that they still can eat. And so what I do is I put together a meal plan. Sometimes it's a meal plan, a breakfast, lunch, and dinner ideas, or sometimes it's just a recipe book with some breakfast, lunch, and dinner recipes. But these are all recipes that contain the foods that would still be on their yes list. And so we're not counting calories. We're talking just about specific foods. And all of a sudden, when they see the recipes, they're like, oh, I can do this. And so for me, using meal planning with my clients, it's like the implementation part. It's the, okay, I got this. I can keep going. I can do this. For myself, this was an interesting question thinking about meal planning. Initially, I thought, do I meal plan? No, I don't meal plan. And then Lisa was talking in one of our previous meetings, and she said, if you're buying groceries at the store, you're meal planning. And I thought, sure, that's very true. When I go to the grocery store, there are certain staples that I'm always buying. So I always can make a certain rotation of food that I know that I'm familiar with. That being said, my husband is a chef, and most people think, oh my gosh, that's awesome. He must cook at home. Well, yeah, but he's never home. So most of the time for dinner, for most meals, it's just me. And so I'm not meal planning per se that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'm going to have these specific foods. But yes, I'm absolutely meal planning in the sense that I know for my body what foods are better for me. And so those are the foods that I'm buying at the store to make something that week. And my husband is a meat eater, where I do eat meat, but I tend to eat a little more vegetarian. And so on the nights when he's not home, it's great because I can play around with more vegetarian recipes. And then when I know he's going to be home, of course, I'm planning to make a meal that he would be more interested in. So that's how I use meal planning.
Great. Lisa, you're up.
So I am a former caterer, and meal planning, I used to be able to, I used to plan meals for 300 people. So I'm very strategic in my personal meal planning. And my best thing that I go to that I really recommend to my clients is an app called Plan to Eat. And it will save so much time and money. And it doesn't have to be rigid, and it doesn't have to be structured, because I'm working with clients, helping them get out of diet culture and the rigidity of eating, where they have been told to eat this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner, do not eat this, do not eat that. I'm trying to incorporate freedom and permission to eat all foods within my clients. So I don't ever tell anybody what to eat. I help them discover what foods they like to eat, what foods are going to give them satisfaction. I also talk about time management, because I'm going back to my 4 Ps, which was plan, prep, provision, and protect. Where is your time? What do you have to do on this day? What is non-negotiable? What's negotiable? So that we can find windows of time where you can set aside that planning time period. Also using that time management, when can you prep? When can you get to the store? How are you getting your groceries into your house? And it's all based on curiosity and trying to discover what's working. And when there's a challenge, let's discover where that challenge is so that we can take that step back to help them move forward. So I'm a big believer of flexibility, balance, variety, pleasure, and simplicity. And, it's easy when we're talking about food to have a lot of judgment of this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. Taking away that judgment of, you know what, if you have Cocoa Krispies for breakfast, so what? How did it make you feel? Is that something that you want to continue to do? Is it something that you're going to eat once a week? And, going back to what you had said earlier was, your pediatrician said, it's not about what you eat in one day, it's what you eat over a period of time. So I'm a big believer of, yes, let's find a few meals, let's get those on the calendar. Let's start simple, because if you're not meal planning at all, let's start with one meal that you can start to get on the table. Because if somebody tells you to start to plan for a week at a time, your eyes are going to glaze over and say, you know what, I'm kind of done here. Like it doesn't work, because that doesn't work. What is the simplest meal that we can start with that you can start to plan for? Something else that I really find important is to find things that are going to match your skill level. If all you know how to do is boil chicken, let's start there and build your skill set from that space up. How can we enhance that meal? Totally agree with everybody that always, always, always cook for leftovers. When the pandemic hit and everybody was, what are we going to eat? What are we going to eat? What are we going to eat? And I prefer more plant-based meals. So it's not as if I could stick, 3 steaks in the freezer and say it's going to be fine. My go-to is lots of soups that have a different variety, so that I always, I bought all these vegetables and I bought all of these things and beans and lentils, and I just batch cooked. Here is, if I'm making a soup or a stew or a chili, I would double or triple that recipe, put it in containers, stick it in my freezer. And that is always part of my meal planning, that on the nights that I'm tired, I'm working until 9 o'clock, I'm alone, whatever it is, there is always something that I can take out that is going to be, in my mind, satisfying for me. What are those satisfying meals for you? What are your go-tos? Find a couple of basics. There's nothing wrong with rinse and repeat. So it's all about discovering what works best for you.
Love that. Love all of that, all of the above. And I just want to comment that we are at 12:55 and our plan is to go until 1:30. I recognize that a lot of people are on this during their lunch hour. So yes, we are recording. You will get the recording. We hope that you can stick around and hear the rest of this, and we understand if you can't. So to what all of these wonderful panelists have said, I would add the following. I do teach a meal planning system, and I usually shock my clients by first showing them what it looks like if I were to write down my meal plan for the week. Because when my husband and I got married, he's from China and my mom is Russian. My grandmother lived with us. So I grew up in a sort of non-traditional family, not a strictly American kind of family. So here I had 2 families that were not used to eating out a lot, not a lot of processed food. So we committed really early on to cooking from scratch as much as possible. And we really provided our kids with hot breakfast. It was rare that they would have cold cereal. So we just committed early on to making that happen. And we just naturally fell into a system. So what I show my clients when we start talking about meal planning is 7 days, 3 meals a day, what it looks like. But what I tell them is, I do not sit down and write this out. This happens to be the way we fell into it. But you can see on this chart that everything on this chart shows up more than once. So my favorite example is if I make roasted chicken and broccoli and brown rice on one night, you can bet that I'm making 2 chickens, twice the broccoli I need and twice the brown rice I need, because later in the week, I can do something with that extra chicken. I can make a casserole with the brown rice, or I can make hot cereal from the brown rice. I can put that broccoli into a soup. So as you can see, when you look at that chart, it's kind of cool because I bold everything that shows up more than once. And you can sort of draw a line from, oh, chicken is here and chicken is here and chicken is here and broccoli's here. Oh, and it's here. It's here too. So I do a lot of that kind of work, but not all at once. So I also start with, where are you now? How many meals can you create that are related to each other? So the way I do that is through 4 steps. The first one is learning to pre-prep. So learning to chop all the vegetables you need for the week, or, wash and spin your salad greens for the week. A lot of times it has to do with teaching people how long food will last in the refrigerator, because a lot of people don't know. A lot of people are very deceived by how long food will last, and they think it has to be thrown out after 24 hours. So learning how to pre-prep, what can be made ahead of time, what dry ingredients can be mixed ahead of time. So for example, you think about going out and buying Bisquick, highly processed. You can make your own Bisquick at home in big batches, put it in separate bags, and then all you do is add the liquid ingredients. So little tricks like that for pre-prep. I do something called building blocks and basics, which is if I'm making tomato sauce at some point during this week, I need marinara, I make 3 batches. I make 3 batches of white sauce when I make white sauce. I make 3 batches of stock when I make stock. And that way you can always be rotating stuff through by using your freezer. And I don't make all those at once. I don't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to spend all Saturday cooking. But if I can make 3 batches of marinara sauce while I chop up my vegetables for the week, I've done a lot of food prep, and it's none of it is particularly difficult or time consuming. The next step I teach is plan overs, which is exactly what a few of you have talked about, which is always make more than you need because you can use it sometime later in the week. And the last part is friending your freezer, like really understanding how to use your freezer to the maximum potential that it has. One is doing what Lisa was saying, which is make 3 batches of chili and freeze 2 of them. Then you always have something completed, ready to go. You can just reheat, right? Another way to use it is those 2 extra batches of marinara sauce that I made. I can definitely put them in the freezer and use them later that month. So just as I said at the beginning, my philosophy of meal planning is always cook for more than 1 meal. Every time you're cooking, you think, if I make extra of this, what can I do with it later? So then it becomes more a matter of, I can have this today and I can have that tomorrow. And then you get really good at that. And you're like, oh, then I could do 3 days in a row. And then you can do 4 days and 5 days. So that was the way that my husband and I kind of figured out, wow, we really can cook 21 meals a week from scratch and not spend our lives in the kitchen. And I've seen some really great comments coming through. So Lisa says menu mapping. Yes, exactly. It's like creating a map. Like, how are all these recipes and days related?
So I build, like, here's my core thing. Like if I'm making chicken, it can go into chicken tacos, or if I wrote it's, quinoa, I can put it into a Mediterranean quinoa salad. I can put it into an eggplant with quinoa and tomatoes. And I will, just like similar to you, is I will prep all of those things at one time. So if I know that I'm having onions on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I will pre-prep it and do it all at one time so that it just saves time. Efficiency is huge. Yep. And starting out small, just thinking, okay, if I'm using this today, how can I use it tomorrow? Don't think about 4 or 5 other meals ahead. Just keep it really simple, because that's when you start to shut down. There's very, in our house, there's so little waste because everything gets repurposed. There's always an underlying path that food item that's been made is going to be used and woven throughout the rest of the week.
Yep.
More things can be frozen than you think. Like
yes,
quinoa,
it was mind blowing to me that you could freeze. Like, I never knew you could freeze grains. And then I went to Trader Joe's once. I'm like, what's this? Cooked brown rice in the freezer? Oh, that was a big aha moment. Like, hey, I could do that at home. I don't need to buy there.
When the pandemic hit, because I would never freeze like fish. I was like, oh, I need it fresh. And I, when that started, I was like, you know what? I'm buying fish and it's going to last me 2 weeks at a time. And in the freezer it went.
Yep.
And it has, I'm a pretty picky eater, and not picky in what I like to eat, but picky in quality and what I'm choosing to eat. I go to the grocery store probably twice every 2 weeks. I go as little as possible. And
Lisa, how do you wrap your fish for the freezer?
I just, however it's been wrapped, and I take it home because I'm using it within a few weeks. Stasher bags are amazing. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of those. You can freeze in them, you can defrost in them. So instead of because I will typically, to defrost a piece of fish or a piece of meat, I will put it into a stasher bag in a bag of cold water, in a bowl of cold water. And that way I'm not throwing out a new plastic bag every time I want to defrost something, because it does it pretty quickly.
Are they
Ideally-
silicone bags? Are they like?
They're silicone.
Yes,
They can go
yes.
into the dishwasher. They come in all sorts of colors and sizes, whatever floats your boat, but they have been the best thing for defrosting, freezing, snacking, all different things. So highly, highly recommend stasher bags.
Love that. Yes, forgot to mention that. Another thing we think about a lot as people who teach food prep is like the sustainability of it. The environmental impact of it can be really huge. You can do it really, really well, or you can be, I think Lisa and I talked about this in our podcast episode, that we were both in catering and realized like, oh my God, so much waste. Like it was one of the reasons I just could not wait to get out of that business. So, anybody from the audience have questions that they want to ask? Danielle made the comment that she cooks 2 times a week for 6 dinners and lunches. That's amazing. And having become a complete empty nester, eventually I'm going to wipe this smile out my face, but having become an empty nester, I will tell you that I have cooked on Sundays and it's lasted 1 to 2 weeks, which is great. And I mean, I cook foods that happen to have a lot of variety of vegetables in them. And so I know I'm not suffering nutritionally from eating the same thing day after day, because there's such a variety between the 2 dishes that I make. But yes, it is possible to do that. And it gets a whole lot easier when nobody else is involved. So any other questions? All right, we're going to keep going. The next question is somewhat of a speed round also. Name 1 to 3 staples that you keep on hand at all times. All right, and we're going to make this one quick because we have more questions to cover. Speed round. 1 to 3 staples you keep on hand at all times. Christa.
My number 1 is frozen organic broccoli, because it can be boiled, baked, and it can be thrown in the air fryer from frozen. I love a big bag of frozen organic broccoli. My number 2 would be almond butter. And number 3 is organic brown rice pasta.
Excellent. All right, Michelle.
My 3 are dried grains like quinoa, farro, and a host of different rices, basmati, wild, etc. Dried beans, garbanzos, lentils, and black beans are the most popular in our house. And then broth. I keep on hand both vegetable and beef and chicken, depending on what I have going on. That gives me that flexibility among all of those to, put a quinoa salad together quick, or, do a variety of different things. But to me, those are the 3 staples that really drive the train.
Great. Lisa.
I definitely agree with Michelle. Those are definitely tops on my list. What I would probably add to that are eggs and my own storage of homemade soups, that I have enough that will typically last me from October until August. Like I just batch cook, and those are definitely one of my staples.
Excellent. All right. I'm with Michelle also on the beans and grains for sure. And I would agree with Lisa on the eggs. I always have eggs in my refrigerator. And my third one, because I'm a kale pusher, I always have some form of dark leafy green. Always, always, always. Not sure that counts as a staple because it's fresh food, but it pretty much is a staple at my house. So, all right. Next question. What makes a meal a satisfying experience? All right. Lisa, you're up first.
This goes back to really how I work with my clients on the practice of intuitive eating. And really it's understanding your hunger, eating, learning to honor your hunger, removing diet voices when you are eating, making peace with food, the company, your surroundings, your environment, being present with your food, and ultimately understanding how to be satisfied with what you're eating. Because if you're not satisfied with what you're eating, you're going to keep going back for more of something. So if you're craving something, go for it, because eventually you're going to get there anyway. You're going to have a little bit of this, you're going to have a little bit of that, but that little voice is still going, I want that. So how do you discover your satisfaction? mindful eating, being aware, using all of your senses when you are eating, being present. What does it taste like? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Just really becoming embodied with your food and discovering ultimately what satisfies you. So coming with it from curiosity, because if you're not satisfied, instead of saying I'm not satisfied, flip it and say, what would make me satisfied? What else do I need, or what do I need to shift to make this meal more enjoyable? So those are
Beautiful. Love it. Michelle?
Thank you, Liza. What makes a meal a satisfying experience to me is the relationship that forms among yourself and the food and the environment. I love the quote from food historian Laura Shapiro when she says, eating the food cooked by your own hand from your own family and traditions are what constitute the emotional life with food. And to me, that emotional life with food is one of the hallmarks of a positive food experience. And the food experience is about that human connection. It's about giving, it's about that relationship. So the sense of food, for example, and fun and enjoyment permeates the air just as much as when you walk in the door and you smell pasta cooking, or you smell a batch of cookies or other foods. You have those memories and you have that connection and you have those experiences that help to bring that joy of food, so to speak. So what makes a meal a satisfying experience is overarchingly that something that motivates you to be the best version of yourself.
That's good. Christa?
So I went with the literal meaning of satisfying to answer this question. And so each of our bodies are all completely different, right? What you need, what I need, what everybody else here needs can be different. And so between protein, fats, and carbs, sometimes people need more carbs. Sometimes people need more protein, and it can be day to day. It could be, it's not, I'm not labeling it. It's just, these are the types of foods that we typically eat. And so I know for myself, if I eat a meat and 2 vegetables, a half an hour later, I'm going to be thinking about that rice, or I'm going to be thinking about a cracker, or is there popcorn in the cabinet? Because my body tends to want more carbs. And that, though other people do great with no carbs and, more meat. And so I go with Lisa with like the mindful eating and how are you feeling? What does your body want? And giving yourself a little bit more of what you want, so that after you're done eating, you're not craving other things.
Wonderful. Great. So I would add that I'm one of these people that my clients can't really relate to initially, which is, they're like, for a lot of people, cooking is overwhelming. They don't like to do it. For me, it's really a spiritual practice. And I really geek out over food energetics, which comes mainly from traditional Chinese medicine, but I've added some layers to it. So for me, really connecting on a spiritual, energetic level with the food, not in the sense of obsession or anything like that, emotional eating. No, what I mean is really thinking about, when I'm cooking, I'm thinking about the food. I'm looking at the food. I'm thinking about how it got to my kitchen and how I'm going to feed it to my family and it's going to nourish them. And, the fact that I bought this food, did it support the farmers who grew it in a really healthful way? Is it good for the environment? So for me, a really satisfying meal starts with a really intimate connection to the whole food web that it came from. And I got a direct message from Danielle, who says she has to hop off, but she did bring her weekly meal planner and she would take a few minutes to share. So I would love, Danielle, go ahead and share.
Let me just preface by saying, before I got remarried and had these 5 kids, I didn't cook at all. I was young and my first husband he cooked all the time and I traveled. So I had no practice. So some of what I learned out of like necessity, because I had to survive raising 5 teenagers, like I was in over
It was
my
a
head.
matter of survival.
It was a matter of survival. And I live on Pinterest. I'm obsessed with Pinterest. So I'll show you the beginning of it because when all the kids were home, I did more planning than I have to do now. So I don't know if you can see this, but that's each week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? I literally just bought a little calendar at like TJ Maxx and divided each day into columns so that I had breakfast, lunch, and dinner because that's what we were doing with all those kids. Now it's just each day. And what I do is I look in my pantry first to see what kinds of things do I have that I could make a meal with, either in the pantry or the freezer. And then I think about what are we doing that week? Do we have dinners out? Do I have any after hours meetings that I'm going to go to that I'd like to leave a meal at home for the family to throw in the oven? Is it like a football game? Do I want to have chili on a Saturday? I think about like what we're doing that week. And then I start plunking in the meals, and I usually do it in pencil so that I can like go back and change things around. And then I make my grocery list next to the meal. So here I decide what I need for fajitas or tacos, and I look in my pantry for what I already have, and then I make a list of what I need. And this goes to the grocery store with me. And then down at the bottom of the week, I put all the other things that I might want to grab up, miscellaneous stuff that I don't have. And I also change things around. You know, life happens and you might change a meal. And this always is on my counter next to my stove where my cookbook stand is. So everybody always knows what we're having, when I'm going to be gone, what they can expect, if it's in the freezer, if it's in the fridge. And I really do cook twice a week. When I say cook, I mean like spend a ton of time in the kitchen. Like I will pull stuff out and warm it up or grill the meat, but I'm really only food prepping twice, maybe 3 times a week on a bad week. So
that's beautiful.
That works for me. And it's not complex. This is literally just a calendar from the store that I write in.
It's simple and it works for you. And I think there's some great ideas in there, Danielle. And what I want to also draw out there is that Danielle's making a very important point. Eating out is part of a meal plan. It can be part of a meal plan, right? A meal kit can be part of a meal plan. Frozen food from your freezer that you made before is part of a meal plan. So when you start thinking about meal planning in that sense, it's not like, oh my God, it's 21 meals completely from scratch every time I have to spend all the time in the kitchen. I think that's just such a great example of that. And the 4 of us had talked about this before, like that all counts, right? And when you look at your week ahead and think about these are the special circumstances, you might be relieved, like, oh, we're going out on Thursday. I don't have to meal plan about that and not feel guilty about it. Like that's part of your meal plan, right? So thanks for sharing, Danielle. Yes. Thanks for sharing and thanks for coming. I know you have to hop off.
Yeah, thank you for letting me join. I'll see you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yes,
Bye-bye.
absolutely. All right. So another quick speed round. Favorite herb, and since we probably all know the difference, herb and or spice. So you can give an herb, a spice, or one of each, because I couldn't decide. So I had to make that like available to us. Christa.
I'm so glad you said both. So my favorite spice is organic garlic powder. My favorite herb is organic parsley.
Perfect. Michelle.
My favorite herb is basil. I love the smell of fresh basil.
Yeah.
I could smell it a mile away. But it just takes my mind on a journey. It's so good in Italian cooking, Thai cooking, wrapping it in a spring roll or other cuisines. I grow fresh basil in my garden, so it's easily
even your yard smells good.
Why, thank you. And they're easy to maintain. You've got a bounteous array of basil there. It's very flexible, whether it's sprinkling it on a pizza, doing a spring roll, maybe you're crushing it up in some cooking, even dried basil. I don't make my own dried, but dried ingredients are well and work fantastically, just the same to really enhance those foods. And basil's my favorite go-to.
Excellent. Got a spice favorite?
Spice favorite, I'd probably say garlic powder. That's a good go-to.
2 votes for garlic powder. All right, Lisa.
My go-to, everything is better with garlic. There's Garlic is just like another food group in our house.
Yeah.
Everything.
Antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial.
It is,
It's good stuff. If we all smell the
absolutely.
garlic
Garlic
we'd
is
be healthier.
everything. And then I would go between basil and thyme. I always like my go-tos. So I don't know that I could explain basil any better than Michelle did. So I'm going to leave it at that because that was such a full embodied experience of basil. So garlic and basil, and they go great together.
Yes, good point. Yes, they go well together. I'm going to go with cardamom for my spice. I absolutely adore cardamom, and cilantro for my herb. And I'm definitely not a person who thinks it tastes like soap. So, all right.
My husband can smell cilantro a mile away. He loves it.
Oh, he loves it. Yeah. All right. So a final sort of wrap up question before we have more questions from the audience, if we have any more. Lisa, there's a comment for you in the chat if you want to address that.
Okay, I tried Plantain. I really liked it, but when my free trial ended, I couldn't get over the price. Well, it's a great time of year to be talking about that. Is that right around Thanksgiving, Black Friday, they run a special, and I believe it is about $20 for the year. And you can buy multiple years because I believe the price is $39, $40 for the year right now. I don't recall what it is offhand. I buy several years at a time. I absolutely find that it it so worth it, in my opinion. If there's a way that you can do it, I just find that it just saves so much time and money in the long run that it actually pays for itself. So if anybody is interested, I'd be happy to share more about that app later on, or we're really running out of time. So hopefully that helps, Shari. Definitely look for the pricing around Black Friday because they run a special.
Good to know. I didn't know that people did that for apps too. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. So a sort of a wrap up question for each of us, a little wisdom for the journey. Start here. What is your number one meal planning tip? All right. And you know what? For this one, I didn't even write down who's going first. So I'm just going to say, Christa, you go.
Keep it simple. Pick a process and keep it simple. Even if you do it 2 days a week,
Yes.
just, stick with one thing and keep it simple.
Love that. Yeah. Start with 2 days. Start where you are.
Yeah.
If you're not planning at all, start. If you're not cooking at all, start with one meal. If you're not planning at all, start with 2 meals. And then build from there. All right, Michelle.
Plan strategically and account for contingencies. If something comes up, you can switch it around. I love Danielle's meal plan where she writes it in pencil. You don't know. Meal planning is not rigid. You can have as much flexibility as you want, but plan strategically so that you have those tools available. Meal planning is your key to transforming your life, to having healthy food into your body and being able to have that energy you need, regardless of whether you're transporting several teenagers from activity to activity, or you've got business meetings, or you have other things. But a little bit of meal planning goes a long way.
Beautiful. Lisa.
I'm definitely amongst the keep it simple, even if it is thinking about, I like these proteins for the week. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't need a recipe. Find a couple of proteins, find a couple of grains, find a couple of vegetables. That's meal planning. It doesn't have to be extensive, laborious. And if there is no judgment. If you don't like to cook, frozen vegetables work just fine. There is no just. Discovering what is simple, what is easy, what works for you. And when you get stuck, try to be curious and understand where you're getting stuck. Where's the barrier so that you can back up and dissect how to get through that challenge so that it becomes easy. Just keep breaking it down and finding somebody who can help you do that. And meal planning also works with friends. If you have somebody who cooks something amazing and you cook something amazing, divide and conquer. There's so many different ways. Get rid of the rigidity, get rid of the standard of it has to be this, and give yourself flexibility, balance, and freedom.
Love it. I would add to that the idea of simplicity. One thing that I always ask my clients is, how would it look if it were easy? And that can work for anybody, because if you don't cook at all right now, how would it look if it were easy? Might be getting a meal kit. It might be just making a super simple dish. If you're already cooking 3 nights a week, no problem. How would it look if it were easy? Well, maybe we could get up to 4 or 5 nights. So the question of how it looks easy, how would this feel easy, is different based on where you are, but every single person can benefit from answering that, because then you're not going to take on something impossible, which is, I'm going to plan out 21 meals and make them all from the get-go. So start where you are and keep asking yourself, how would this look if it were easy? All right. Questions from the audience? Anybody? And you can address them to a specific panelist or all panelists, whatever you like. Anybody? Got people hopping off. Thanks, Sherry. I would encourage the panelists as well. If you have any lingering curiosities about something somebody has said, let's ask each other questions.
I think we all kind of springboard all from the same, even though the end product might look a little, well, maybe the end product does look the same, but we all come from a different philosophy, and that it's really discovering what works best for us and what client base and what their level of expertise or non-expertise is, and how do we meet everybody where they're at to move them to a next step.
Excellent. All right. Well, I have a question for each of you. And that is, we've been talking in a very general sense about what we do. I would love to know from each one of you what you have coming up in the very near future that people might want to hop onto. Michelle?
Thank you. Well, as far as meal planning, we've got, are you referring to our little freebie thing?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be meal plan related. So just, you know, what do you have coming up in your business that you're excited about that people might want to know about?
Well, as far as the business, in addition to coaching, I'm also the host of the Food Experience Unplugged podcast. We're going to be rolling out a premium membership for that. So in addition to the great interviews that you all know and love, that you have a lot of additional perks and features, a lot of kind of backstage type of information that you can subscribe to. So look for that coming up shortly.
I love that. It reminds me of a friend who had a podcast that she interviewed women on it, and she always had this sort of premium. If you're a premium member, you get the extra interviews, which was like the after the interview or before the interview, and she called it "peek up the skirt." So you'll have some of those. That's great. Yeah.
Oh yes.
All right. And what are you offering as part of our resources?
As part of our resources, I offer a free 5-day email course to help you get clarity on your health goals, and health goals including meal planning. Where even if you're just starting, you're just doing meal kits for now. Well, how do I gravitate toward, exploring the wonderful world of cooking? Perfect opportunity here. It's free. You explore to your heart's content. A lot of great resources there, a lot of great tools, and a lot of great connections. So I highly recommend, please sign up for it and get those resources under your belt.
Great. And I'm also going to put in a plug for Michelle's LinkedIn profile. She has amazing, every day she has some kind of amazing graphic and little tip for health, and not always meal planning related, but always health related. So one of the people that I religiously follow on LinkedIn. Christa, how about you? What are you excited about coming up, and what are you offering?
So I have today, my offering is a 5 belly trimming 30-minute meal plan. So it's a mouthful, but it's 5 dinners that you can make that will take the question of what's for dinner out of or end the dilemma, I guess. I do have a new freebie that's coming up probably in the next week or so, and it's 3 surprising metabolism saboteurs. So these are some things that you're probably not thinking about, but that really do affect your metabolism. So that if you grab the meal plan, you'll be on my list, and then you'll get the new freebie that's coming soon too.
Great. Thanks, Christa. And Lisa, how about you? What are you excited about and what are you offering today?
So I am excited that for those of you that are local to the Massachusetts area, that I am speaking at the Natural Living Expo in November 13th on Discover How to Find Your Food Freedom. Also coming up in January is my next Body Peace and Food Freedom 6-month one-on-one small group coaching program, which dives into the practice of intuitive eating and body image, as well as sprinkled with bits and pieces of meal planning. And what I'm offering today is my meal plan bonus pack, which has a time management grid, which I referred to early on to help you find some snippets of time to help you start to meal plan. It has top kitchen essentials as well as a staples list and information on a free 1-month plan to eat trial period for the app that I was talking about. So it's a great time to take advantage of that. And I'm not an app person. I think it is the only app that I traditionally use. It's really awesome.
I love that. I'm so not an app person.
It's just like coming from the catering world where I had to write out everything and using Excel spreadsheets and days and I was like, oh my God, all the hours I would have had back if I just had this app.
Yes.
And so
that's great.
That's what I'm offering. And if anybody has any questions, I always offer a free discovery call and happy to help you explore what's next for you in terms of meal planning or the practice of intuitive and mindful eating.
Excellent. All right. My excitement is about 2 programs I'm launching. My signature group program that is really dealing with reversing and preventing burnout starts October 1st. And my stewarding emotional eating program launches again on November 1st. So I'm excited about those 2 upcoming offerings. And my offering for today's resources, which you will get as a PDF with links, is a copy of the PDF version of the workbook that goes along with my cookbook, which is all about meal planning and talks about those 4 steps that I mentioned are my system for always cooking for more than 1 meal at a time. And Kay Sheehan did have a question for us, so let's wrap up on this one, everybody. If you have another minute, what meal is your very favorite meal to prep that's healthy and freezer friendly? Michelle.
Oh, wow. Healthy and free. Oh, I would say my mom's turkey chili recipe.
Yum.
Super easy. I could do it with my eyes closed. You throw it in the crock pot and later in the day. Oh, you come home. The smell is amazing, but so easy to prep. I have a lot of the ingredients already, and it's freezer friendly. If you don't want to have it later in the week, you can put it in your own freezer container and save it for another, maybe a cold winter day. We have a nice bowl of chili or something.
Excellent. Christa.
I was going to say turkey meatballs.
Ooh, nice. Yep. Along the same line. Lisa.
I'm going with veggie chili, lots of beans, lots of vegetables. Absolutely one of my go-to staples that I always have in my freezer, so that if we don't have food in the house, there's always food in the house.
I love this. It seems like we're all suffering from oh gosh, it's cold out. It's chilly weather. I'm going to go with lentil stew. Yeah, so that would be mine. Easy because everything is basically added at once. Cooks, we don't have to pay attention to it while it cooks, and off to the freezer it goes. And you can change the flavor profile in a million different ways by using different spices and herbs. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. I want to honor your time. We're 1 minute over, but thank you, everybody, for being here. Expect the replay as well as the resource sheet to come to you. And as I said, we will not just be starting to mass email all of you, because God knows you don't need that many new emails in your inbox unless you do, in which case we encourage you to sign up for everybody's. And all of our contact information will be on that resource sheet. So thanks for being here. I hope it was helpful. Let's see, offers. Yes, Amy, offers will be in the email. There's going to be an attachment, a PDF attachment that has links, and there will be a Dropbox link for this replay.
Fantastic.
Thanks
Thank you all. This was amazing.
Great.
stuff.